All right. Thank you all so much for coming to this event, which is the Poetry and Math reading, staged by my poetry and math students who are all sitting over here, or mostly sitting over here. It's delightful to see so many of you in the audience, and I hope that we are going to enlighten you as to what this connection between poetry and math truly is. Interestingly, April is not only National Poetry Month, it's also National Math Awareness Month. Did anyone actually know that? It's not something that is as discussed as National Poetry Month, but it seems to be the perfect time to get together and look at the intersection of these two art forms. And I call math an art form, strangely, because I hope that my students over the course of the semester have discovered that it is indeed an art form. So I just want to talk a little bit about me and how this course came to exist. I'm Anna Evans, and I originally, a long time ago, in a country very, very far away, got a degree in chemical engineering. And then I moved to America, and I went and got an MFA in creative writing, which is an interesting kind of background. I'm typically a formal poet, which I think is related to the fact that I have an engineering background. And on one time, I think it was at a social occasion, I was talking to the lovely Professor DiGiorgio, who is here in the front row, and she was lamenting the fact that she had invented this amazing course, Poetry and Math, and now she couldn't fit it into her schedule, and nobody else wanted to teach it because it was just too overwhelming to consider these two disciplines together. And I remember saying, I think I probably had a glass of wine, "Oh, I think I could teach that." And fast forward 3 years, and here we are, and it is a very popular course and typically oversubscribed. Although I think the students come in on day one, and they think it's going to be, because it's actually a W2 and a Q2, which makes it a very valuable general course. But then I tell them on day one that they are going to have to do math and write poetry. And for some reason, this always seems to shock them. I thought there was a clue in the name, personally, but some of them always seem to run screaming for the door at that point. But as you can see, many of them do not run screaming from the door. And I hope that those students who began the semester by taking it as a general requirement, thinking, oh, I just need to check off this for my degree, end feeling at least a deep appreciation for poetry, if not a love for math, which is perhaps a harder sell. So what exactly is this overlap between math and poetry? Well, on the first day, I always draw a Venn diagram on the board, which is in itself, of course, a mathematical object. And I put poetry on one side, and I put math on the other, and I invite the students to help me fill in the intersection in the middle. And we don't have time to do that exercise today, so I'll just tell you a few of the things that it involves. Obviously, anything that involves counting. And that, I think, is where the overlap with form comes in, and my own love of form. So when we write in meter, we have to count stresses. When we write syllabics, we have to count syllables. Then anything that involves pattern. And when we write many formal poems, we have to pattern rhymes, or we have patterns of repetition. And as we go through the presentation, when one of those forms comes up, I'll try and tell you a little bit about the form and the kind of pattern and repetition or rhyme that we're talking about. And then there's anything that involves shape and symmetry. There's a whole area of poetry called concrete poetry, which relies on the visual aspect of the poem in addition to what the words themselves say. And you'll see, hopefully from the presentation behind me, that many of the students have written shaped poems, which communicate visually as well as through their word content. And finally, there's this idea of metaphor. In mathematics, we use symbols, X and Y, for example, variables, to stand for numbers. In poetry, we use ideas to stand for objects or vice versa, and that's metaphor. So there's that whole aspect of it too. So one of the exciting things about teaching this class is that it is such a broad mix of students. I have everything in this class. I have creative writing majors, I have one mathematics major, then I have everything in between. I've got history, I've got health science, I've got biology, I've got computer science, and so some of these students are writing their poems for the first time since elementary school. And that puts them a little bit outside their comfort zone. So I hope that you're going to be very enthusiastic in your reception with them today. And I think you'll be blown away, quite seriously, by the quality of the poems that you're going to hear. Okay, with that said, we're going to begin. We have 26 student poets here today. We're going to begin with Cassidy Lyons. She's a visual arts junior, and she has her two poems that she's going to share with us. The first is a beautiful sonnet. That's one of the repeating rhymed and metered forms, and that's based on a famous Beatles song. And the second is a fractal poem. That's based on fractal geometry, which is the kind of geometry that shows self-similarity on different scales. Here's Cassidy.
Why she gently weeps. She recalls how she was his everything for a forever that ended too soon. His presence alone allowed her to sing, but it seems lately she can't find the tune. Just his touch would strike a chord inside then. He'd rest on her body, she'd not object. She never knew how she longed to, again, have his grip clenched tightly around her neck. But now she's old news, he's left her behind. Inside, she's hollow, he holds her no more. She aches for his fingers to intertwine themselves among the silver strings she wore. She can't help but fret, he's left her dismayed. She thought she'd been loved, she'd only been played. Thanks, and this is my fractal poem. The week of March 27th, 2016. My throat is sick. I must have swallowed fire ants. They stab me in their travels. They poison my voice. They turn it to gravel. I drown them in tea. It soothes their cruel burns, but it's only a Band-Aid and my breath's laced with germs. My chest is sick. Please excuse me, entire class, while I casually cough up a lung. Believe it or not, I'm recovering. My throat is no longer stung. But no one wants to hear it. My presence alone gives them shivers, because I'm still spreading germs and I sound like Joan Rivers. My body is sick. It's become draining to exist or even hold myself up. I don't have the energy to stand, much less to be a grown-up. But don't tell me I look tired. By now you should have learned. These bags under my eyes, you can bet your ass they were earned. But I am sick. I am awesome. I am dope. And I'll get through this, or at least I hope.
Thank you, Cassidy. And the fractal poem will be a recurring instant in here. Our next poet is Holly Anderson, and her first poem is also a fractal poem. It's called a Cantor dust poem. And a Cantor dust fractal image is a particular kind of mathematical image produced by an iterative process, taking away the middle third of a line and then continuing to do that. Her second poem is a symmetric poem. Take it away, Holly.
21st century anger. Ellipsis, noun, a series of 3 or more periods inserted into a sentence to indicate a pause or silence, usually used in dialogue. Ellipses are used today in lieu of other proper punctuation, from Urban Dictionary. Gone are the days of physical cold shoulders and shouting matches. Now, common is the frosty silent treatment, forcing the recipient to neurotically stare at their cellular, thereby coercing them into waiting for the little blue dots. Her versus him. Just because you keep me in your mind does not mean I have to keep you in mine. I don't mean to be rude, but I've been over you for a while now. In other words, since the moment I took everything back, my love, my mind, save time. Time is a gift that, once given, cannot be taken back, which is why I am now careful with choosing the recipients of my gifts. You change that. If your voice won't ever leave my head, then what do you expect me to do? With you moving on, I now know that it was not love, but rather, I am just now learning that it may be something different. I thought that love came wrapped up in shiny paper, a gift solely for me. I didn't realize that love could scar until you took it away, leaving what you can't take, your time.
Thank you, Holly. Our next poet is Chris Kovacs. He's a history junior who fell in love with the sonnet form.
I'd just like to re-emphasize something Professor Evans said, that some of us haven't been exposed to poetry since kindergarten, like Dr. Seuss stuff, all right? But I, for one, came to truly appreciate the poetic process, as our lovely professor would say. All right. To Pauline, the most useless emotion I can have. It gives me nothing, but it's what I feel. I carry regret for what I once had. Living like this is so far from ideal. Regret for the time that wasn't best spent. Regret for words that should not be spoken. Regret for a life filled with discontent. Regretting losing you, our bond broken. Seeking serenity isn't easy when there's a list of things I'd rearrange. With acceptance for what's now slipped away, I'll learn that the rest of my life can change. I can trust in a future not yet set. I no longer dwell, no longer regret. The Bank of Karma. With just my disappointed glance, a frown, I rub off, passing my feelings along. Spreading throughout, it can reach all around, and suddenly, who cares what's right or wrong? If I'm neglecting the scope, the long run, and I only share my pain with people, am I simply unloading my own gun or supplying ammo for a room full? But kindness can act as a deposit, and I can make withdrawals with interest. I like my girl's hair and compliment it. Then later on in the day, I'll get kissed. Whether it's 1 or 1 million actions, I'm mindful and make loving transactions.
Thank you, Chris. Our next poet is Candice Capoferri. She's a health science junior, and her first poem shows glide reflection symmetry, while her second is another form of fractal poem.
The internal monologue of a barista. Her charming greeting, the simple question, "Hello, sir, what would you like?" "Oh no, remember, you need to pay for college. Don't harm him, just breathe." His haughty demand for a caramel cappuccino, wait, take drink, return. "I should spit in this, you won't drink it anyway." "Oh look, you've come back." "I don't want this, there's too much foam. Make another, correctly this time." "Of course I'll get you a new drink. Maybe I'll add cyanide this time." She calmly explains the difference in the drinks, her charming farewell. "You want a latte, I tell you this every week, you damn idiot." Floyd, New Haven, and who knows where else. 1 nest, 2 lovebirds, and 3 fledglings meant the 4 feet of vanity were pitilessly overburdened, and that Friday night dinner would end with a 5-person frenzy for the 6th slice of pizza. The 7 days of practices for 8 different activities gradually wound down when the first, then the second, jumped nest. Now there are 900 miles between the trio, and the 10 or 11-minute conversations aren't quite enough, with the last of them peering over the edge at the wide world, wondering where, in the next 12 months, she'll alight.
Thank you, Candice. Our next poet is Mike Brown. He is a finance major and a junior, and his poems include a modified villanelle, which is a very complicated pattern poem from the French form, and a concrete poem.
Out of my mind, but in plain sight, avoiding you with friendship, terrified by thoughts of love. The first time you smiled, my head felt light. Out of my mind, but in plain sight. Seeing her room was a divine sign from above, following the path of divinity because they always turn right. Out of my mind, falling in love at first sight. Her spirit is free and can't be caged like a dove. Thoughts of her flying with others keep me up at night. Out of my mind, can't keep her out of sight. Not being with her is the only thing I get tired of. Pretending that it's friendship is a losing fight. Out of my mind, friendship just doesn't feel right. Like a winter walk wearing one lonely glove, she is that rare combination of beautiful and bright. Just when I thought love was dead, she gave me light. Out of her mind, but I have no sight. Suicide is never an option. You have no right. What caused you so much pain that stormy night? You have a son. Suicide is not an option, right? Out of my mind, I wish I answered her calls that horrible night. Life is like a box. Life goes in circles, alone. Life is life. Feels like it's going in circles at the top of a box. My life is going in circles, pyramid, nowhere to go. Life is like a box. Life goes in circles. But down to the very bottom of it all, dead on arrival. Every breath leading survival. Life is so much more complex than eating, shelter, and sex. I wish I was still 25, the last days I felt alive.
Thank you, Mike. And the last shape on there is a skull and crossbones, I believe. And the top one spells DOA, dead on arrival. That's right. Our next poet is Morgan Cox. She's a literature junior, and she wrote a ghazal, which is a complex rhyming form, and her second poem is another fractal poem.
What you put me through. Nothing ever seems to go right under the willow. Scatter leaves take flight under the willow. How long has it been since I last saw you? Words and promises become trite under the willow. Day in and day out, I wait for you, even in the season of white under the willow. 100 dreams taunt me with your face. I tremble in loneliness and fright under the willow. Flowers blossom and perish on time, yet there is no relief from this plight under the willow. Finally, you show up late with your battered self, but I, Morgan, have forsaken my right under the willow. The suspension before the fall. He thinks my dopamine is out of order again. It's been so long since my inner thoughts scratched themselves onto paper. He thinks it would be nice to go outside in the light again, only if the clouds would vanish. He thinks spring is still beautiful, but bogged down by essays and lumen due dates. He thinks it would be nice to enjoy life again. I'm tired of this amusement ride, guided by these shaky tracks.
Thank you, Morgan. Our next poet is Drew Ludwig. He's a history major and a senior, and his first poem is a tritina, which is one of those poems where the end words cycle around. It's a little less complicated and long than a sestina, which uses 6 words, it only uses 3. And his second poem shows glide, reflection, symmetry.
The doctor and her patient. Entrenched within the walls of Arkham was the clown. He was more neurotic and deranged than others who committed crime. Only one who cared for him, who had the same proclivity to violence. She too loved causing bedlam and violence. Only one ever clashed with the doctor and her clown. That was the bat, who persistently interrupted crime. When all 3 brawled at night, nothing was quieter than crime. Miss Quinzel and her joker were defeated through the use of violence, but increasingly escaped from Arkham, which housed this lunatic clown. HQ and Mr. J, this is their story: crime, violence, and clowning around. An evening with the bat. Droplets of rain fill the black sky. It is a cold and dreary evening in Gotham. Atop Wayne Tower, the bat sits and waits, looking down on the city and pondering where to strike. He sees the Iceberg Lounge first. The lounge holds a man named Cobblepot within. He strikes down Oswald with such ease, 1 down, 2 to go. He sees the National Bank. The former DA with 2 faces is robbing it. Though after lots of gunfire, Harvey is put down. 2 down, 1 to go. Now the bat sees the riddled man. After gloating he's the best detective of the 2. Now this time, though, Edward is tricked by his own riddle. 3 down, 0 left. It is now time for the bat to apprehend the rogues. The rogues are now off to GCPD to be processed. My name is Jim Gordon. This is what the Batman does every night.
Thank you. Thank you, Drew. If you listen closely, you may detect a theme in Drew's poems. Our next poet is Alison Todd. She's a literature junior. Her first poem is a symmetric poem called An Onnet, and her second poem is another cantor dust form poem.
Eloise. Her small hands wrap around my fingers while her drowsy eyes slowly close. I wonder what she dreams of. Cats? I'm having a rough week and I suck at writing these things. I'm terrible at writing poetry, I must admit. Why does it come so natural to others when it does not to me? Will I ever acquire the skills it takes?
Yes, Alison, you have already acquired many skills. Our next poet is Mike Messina. He's a biology junior. His first poem is a duo rhyme, and his second is a symmetric form called an albergonnet.
The life of a college student. No sleep at night because of stress. My mind is lost, too much distressed. From all things, I can't fix this mess. Careers and schools, I felt their wrath. They wanted to guide my own path. Instead, I've been dealt a bloodbath. Accomplished no goals, no progress on life, and some say I'm depressed. Who said I needed to impress? I could do what I want, I guess. My life is too much to process, yet not quite a lost aftermath. Can I fight and tweak a new path? Sure I can. I'm no psychopath. Within me, feelings are suppressed, but in the end, I'll have success. And this one's called I Only Did This Because I Had to. This piece will be boring. I did not have the time to use words that were electric. Used a template and kept it minimal. The final product is outclassed by everyone. I can't compete, so clearly it does not matter to me. I hope that it was not too obvious for you to see. The poem's instructions say it's almost done, so shouldn't this line have 10 syllables? All I know is it's symmetric. Check the lines and the rhymes. Are you snoring? I'll cease.
And if you check the lines and the rhymes, you'll see that it has a very complex interlocking rhyme scheme and that the syllable counts are exact. So I think he's kind of deprecating himself somewhat there with this poem. Okay, thank you, Mike. Our next poet is Danielle Karai. She's a communications junior, and she wrote a symmetric poem and a rhyming poem.
The circle of life. Karma, cause and effect. If you are nice, happiness will come your way. If not, do not expect good consequences. That bitch comes around. Unless you stay on her good side, her cold heart will burn you down. She will always hold up her end of the deal. Even if she does not get you right away, she will control your fortune. She is the one who decides your future. Hunger thrive. Twisting and turning, wrenching away, I make sounds that gurgle and grumble. Sometimes the noise seems to last all day. Unless fed, I continue to rumble. This feeling inside is uneasy. I'm not sure how I got to this point. My chest is starting to feel wheezy. My body starts to tighten all joints. Everyone has the need to succeed, but in order to get there, we may have to bleed.
Thank you, Danielle. Our next poet is Mary McQuarrie. She's a communications junior, and her first poem is a pontoon, which is a complex interlocking pattern poem where lines 2 and 4 of each stanza become lines 1 and 3 of the next stanza.
Mondays at the soda shop. There used to be free milkshakes on Mondays. That was before Lou went crazy. There was always laughter at the soda shop. Kids turned in drawings and got prizes. But that was before Lou went crazy. Little Kara used to dance on karaoke night, singing off-key lyrics and about being in and out of love. We never knew quite what was next. Kara loved to dance on karaoke night. Lou used to join in and hand out gold stars. We couldn't have known what would come next. Lou killed 3 kids before they got him. He joined in and handed out gold stars. There used to be free milkshakes on Mondays. He killed 3 kids before we caught him. I swear, there used to be laughter at the soda shop. And the second poem I wrote on my own because I was annoyed at poetry at the time. On faith. This poem is stupid because its author is stupid. Don't be harsh with it. Let the words link syllables like elbows forming a prayer circle, praising things they know nothing of. Let these words become brothers. Let them stream together, pretending alone they couldn't make sense, that they couldn't find their own destiny. Let these letters find beauty in their arrangement, even though this is a worthless poem that will never make a cent. Let these words feel like they were each painstakingly selected, pieced together to make a point. Words like people need to think that existence itself isn't just plain random, and a little bit stupid most of the time. Words need to have faith in their author. People need to have faith in their God. That's the way it is, even if it is a little bit stupid.
Nothing stupid about that poem. All right, so our next poet is Zina Namor. She is one of the most sought after people in the class for group work because she's our math major, and she's a sophomore. She wrote a symmetric poem, and then the second poem is also her own poem written outside of class.
Life in a box. Empty, my life seems. I close my eyes, pondering my dreams. Enclosed between the walls, recalling the scenes, shutting my eyes with this life empty. The second poem is called My One True Love. I walk by you and try not to get sucked in, but you look so comforting, I just want to snuggle in. Your warmth, peacefulness, protecting me from the outside world. I'm able to hide myself and you won't say a single word. I can scream, I can yell, and you'll just take it all in. When I lay on you, my body just sinks right in. But sometimes you distract me from what I really have to do. I get so attached, I don't want to leave you. But I know you'll be here every morning, every night, snuggled up against you, what a beautiful sight. When pressed against you, my thoughts disappear. Oh, bed, how comfy and clear.
Great trick ending there. Okay, our next poet is Douglas Anderson. He's a junior in the visual arts program, and his first poem is the metrical poem that he wrote, and his second is another fractal poem.
And both of those poems are extremely depressing, for which I apologize in advance.
But they're awesome.
I don't think I'm generally a very emotional person, but I just had like emotional semester, I guess, some stuff going on in my life. And I want to say thank you, Professor, and for this whole class, This was a really cool class for me. And I think art, I'm talking a lot. Art helps me cope through shit, It's always helped me in life. Creation has pushed me through a lot of tough things, and I think that this semester was poetry, so thank you for that. This poem's called The Quiet Sound of Courage. I met this kid once in a children's ward. 9 years old, body racked with cancer, dying slowly, his life fading with each low breath. Like granite, he lay against crashing waves of pain, thin smiles betrayed by clouded eyes. 9 years old, trying to be brave, courage most grown men will never know. Yet this boy stifled tears so that his mother could shed them. 9-year-old should not know what stoic is. Pain in youth should not be synonymous. One more day should not be a birthday wish, and no child should ever have to end like this. But he did. 9 years old, no more, forever. He's gone now, that boy, and I never learned his name or where his weathered tombstone lies, but I will never forget his courage or the iron dignity of his strength. 9-year-olds should not know what stoic is, but if he can do that, then I can do this, whatever this might be. So this one you have to do cartwheels to read appropriately. So I'll just read it for you if that's okay. It's called Staring Up at the Night Sky and Thinking, I Realize that stars are just dust in the vast infinity of space, and we matter as much and as little as they do. The same energy that causes stars to shine pulses through my veins, and when I look up into the night sky, I'm really just staring into a vast reflection of self on a larger scale. I'm not speaking poetry to you right now. I'm exhaling science and math. I am vocalizing truth. All the things that make me make the planets and the trees. I look around at all this life, knowing within my heart that it is as much a part of me as the marrowed bones beneath my skin. I know that as long as a breeze flutters in the wind, as long as the planets push through the mire of space, as long as stars cast their light into the sky, I cannot cease to exist, for I am them and they are me. We are intrinsically entwined. We, you and I, are as much a part of the universe as the cells in our body are parts of us. And just as atoms weave and bend and braid themselves into molecules to create the human figure, so too are the old gods that we call stars created. And so too are we woven into the larger tapestry of everything that is, has been, or ever will be. As I stare out into this vast eternity that expands forever into sequentially larger parts, it stares back at me with curious starlit eyes as I expand forever into sequentially smaller parts. And we dance like that in a reflected rhythm of opposites. We marvel together at how we can all be the same thing, just on different scales. And looking out into the eternal dark of space in triumphant exultation, I realize that I am more than an earthly shell. I am more than a man. I am a child of the universe. I am a part of the eternal stars, all that ever was, all that ever will be. And as the galaxies and all creation stand behind me in glory and echo their consent, it occurs to me that it is March 31st, 2016. And I'm 5 fucking days late on my cell phone bill. There's no way that I'll have time to get this paper written by tomorrow. My mom is sick, and I don't know that we're gonna be able to fix her this time. My dad just passed away. And that's a thing that I thought that I was going to be okay with. I always, we knew it was coming, and I didn't think it would be that hard for me to deal with. But it is hard, and it's not going away. And these problems, they eat at me. And they're all the same shit, the same issues, the same worries, just on different scales. And I look up at those stars with a heart that sits in my chest like an old beat-up truck weighed down with far too many bricks. And I know that I am them, and I know that they are me, but it doesn't take away the pain. And everyone who hears these words, I and you and we and they have laid down nights in beds built of worry. We have rested our heads on pillows made of pain, and we have all shed tears that seem like they would never dry. I know it's true because we're all the same person, just living in different places, dwelling in different skins. And whether we trudge or stumble or dance through life, I can look into your eyes and see the same patterns of struggle and joy there that are reflected in my own. Because you and I and we and they, we're all the same on different scales. But it goes beyond you and I. Somewhere deep inside us, there's a tiny microscopic cell that's not sure about its future. And out there in the farthest reaches of the unknown, there's a god or a galaxy or a nebula that's worried on a different scale about tomorrow too. Because in the end, stars are just dust in the vast infinity of space. But we are them, and they are us. And they matter as much and as little as we do. Thank you.
And I think that poem is a wonderful illustration of this idea of fractal poetry, of things being self-similar on different scales. So in Doug's poem, he had the cells, and he had the dust, and he had the stars, and also human beings. We are all self-similar on different scales. Okay, our next poet is Erica Arrogante. She's a senior in the physics program, and her first poem is another fractal poem, and her second is a symmetric poem.
I don't know how to go out through that, Doug. Okay. Dead Star. At 7, she was unaware. She didn't know they're always fighting. One night, she saw her mom in tears.
and staring blankly at the sky. Hey, Mommy, what's wrong? Please don't cry. At 12, her mind was full of questions. How can a star so bright be gone? She always thought he'd never leave, but now her heart is filled with hate. Oh, Mom, he made a big mistake. At 21, she realized that even stars collapse and die, so new planets and stars can form. And even though it really hurts, Ma, it's time to let him go. Soaked pillows. When you left me with no notice or promise of return, I cried all night. I cried so gravely I had to dry my pillow every day. I loved the feeling of crying myself to sleep. I thought, alcohol isn't the answer to this kind of pain, but tears are. They are the most effective antiseptic for the wound in my heart. So I did this every day. I began and ended my day reflecting on the wounds you left me. I walked along the memories looking at the holes they sank in my heart. Funny. I always thought that if this day ever came, all that I'd ever concentrate on would be memories of misunderstandings and fights. That they will be the ones that are harder to treat. That no matter how many buckets I fill when I wring tears from my eyes, I will still bleed. But I'm bleeding from your laugh. I bleed more from your jokes. I bleed more from your hugs. How my skin burned when you gently caressed me and how my breath gets shorter whenever I hugged you. I was broken that night you decided to leave, but I'm bleeding even more back when you chose to stay. I was broken that night you told me that you don't want me anymore, but I'm bleeding even more back when you asked me for one more chance. I was broken that night you turned your back on me, but I'm bleeding even more back when as I turned you were still there. I was broken that night you told me that you don't love me anymore, and I'm bleeding and breaking and still bleeding back when you were the first to say I love you. If I look closely at the words written by the wounds that you left me, all that I read are those 3 words. I love you. And for every single day that I had to dry my pillow, my wounds got numb. I love you. And for all the tears that washed my wounds, they've become encrusted. I love you. And for the long time I spent healing them, they're probably closing now. They will close and will be scars that I will read over and over again and will always just say, I love you. Love, if we ever see each other again and you ask me for one more chance, all that I ever ask from you would be new pillows. Because all of my pillows look like they've been out in the rain. I've already cried on all of them and I don't want them anymore. I don't want to sleep on wet pillows anymore and get drowned to sleep with memories that I love you. Oh wait, I love you. I still love you. And finally, it doesn't hurt as much as before, but love, it still hurts.
Thank you, Erica. Our next poet is Kristen Kosa. She's a communications junior, and her poems are another Cantor Des poem, and her second poem was a metric poem, which is a sonnet.
My first one is Playlist. Music speaks words from the heart, the feelings that often go unsaid. Ballads, lyrics, verse, chorus. To try to say what we cannot, intimate messages. Marching band. That Bandcamp joke is not funny to some. August means it's time to learn a new show. Rehearsing until your body goes numb. Suddenly you start to miss all that snow. After hours of practicing our music, the competition begins. Where's the judge? The life of a band kid's far from stupid. Commencing the cadence, we march as one. Silence. Drum major, is your band ready? The music plays, the audience roars loud. One wrong step and this show could get deadly. Our scores are in. Are the directors proud? Hearing one more run can get annoying, but a band kid's life is far from boring.
And until you've actually tried to write a sonnet, don't think it's easy. Okay, our next poet is Laura Eguia. She is a sophomore in the health science program. Her first poem is another fractal poem, and her second poem is a villanelle.
The front line. Coughing is nothing but the tonsils fighting infection and the abdomen contracting. Trouble breathing is fluid invading space, leading to irritation, declining the lungs' attempts at its extraction. Medication is assistance from a small vessel in order to aid the antibodies in battle with the virus. Family is support when the mind turns on itself and thinks there is nothing worth saving. But the human body is a warrior, fighting to make sure that the heart is beating and that there is a life to save. Sunflowers. As if grown from the ground, we reach for the sun. Each day we are watered, we learn a bit more. It's the growing, you see, that is never done. Start with crawling, then walking, and eventually run. Cry on some days, not sure what for, but stand taller, keep stretching, reach for the sun. Life will kick and punch, and it won't be fun. Scars will reopen and burn down to the core. It's the growing, you see, that is never done. Walk with pride and head high, leave no song unsung, and make sure you let them all know you can roar. Always look up and reach for the sun. Not every problem will be overcome. Accept failure, learn to close the door. It's the growing, you see, that is never done. In hard times we long for the days we were young. We can give up, give in, let it all go. Or we can remember the ground and reach for the sun. It's the growing, you see, that is never done.
One of the things that's great about teaching this class is how the students bring their own majors into their poetry. So we just had Laura with the health science poem there. Our next poet is Victor Varath. He's a junior in the creative writing program. His first poem is a very complicated form called the haiku, which is a combination of the haiku and the pontum. The haiku is a form where you count the syllables. The pontum is the one we saw earlier with the repeated lines. His second poem is a sonnet which was written outside the class for a previous class, correct, Victor?
Yes. Something, yeah. There we go. All right, it's kind of interesting that with this poem, I actually normally have nothing to write about in my poems, and so it's normally like last minute. But fortunately, I did something that Professor Emery DiGiorgio actually taught me to do, was when you have an idea, write down the notes so you can use it later. So then when Professor Anna M. Evans gave me this wonderful form to play with, I chose to do that. All right. Haiku, Lady of Glass. My lady of glass, you embrace me with love, but I need to leave you. I'm lost in your dream, you embrace me with love, but can I wake from this? I'm lost in your dream, your nails, they sink in my skin. Can I wake from this? I love the feel of your nails, they sink in my skin, my oblivion. I love the feel of drowning in your hazy dream, my oblivion. You take me away, drowning in your hazy dream, I want to return. You take me away at the end of the bottle, I want to return. My lady of glass, at the end of the bottle, I need to leave you. And because, as I've previously stated with how I normally write my poetry, I just reach back for something somewhat presentable. All right, this is Embers in the Silent Forest. And also, it is a meterless sonnet, so it's not really a sonnet. It could be the nicotine or the habit. Is it reflection, or am I losing myself in embers? Can it steal me away from the cold for a bit? The cold in the silent forest of December. The icy fingers of bitter wind claw and take hold. I just want the ever-elusive warmth of the fire, but the snow and ice only leaves me hollow and cold. The freezing water seeps down into the bone, and I tire. Under the trees of the silent forest, all the light fades from the day. Night falls, and I light another cigarette so the embers can serve as light. The little source of light is my signal tower so that I might find my way. But with the glow of the embers, I am illuminated to be seen far into the night. With the glow, All the unheard wolves can see me in the silent forest, but I don't care. It is my light and my warmth in the frozen forest.
It is so a sonnet, Victor. It's got 14 lines, right? Okay, our next poet is Limaris Espinosa. She's a sophomore in the psychology program. Her first poem is a metrical rhyming poem, and her second is a symmetric poem.
The words. The words that cause your father to grow cold are the same that fill your mother with despair. The kind you think you'd never have to hear, the ones that leave your heart beyond repair, are the ones that destroy you, the only thing that you know to be true. Her ears begin to deafen at the sound. Her eyes reveal a pain too strong to feel. Believing in a hope she's not yet found. Believing in a hope that is not real. But there's just one question that always keeps her up. How could I be the one with leukemia? October 22nd, 1997. Don't stay. Don't settle. Don't show him your tears. Don't tell him that you forgive him. Don't let him disregard your opinion or your view. Don't let him point out your shortcomings, your flaws, like the way you stutter, your hesitance. Don't get to the place where your heart is a rock, when you are cemented in sediment. Don't cower as he yells or he lifts his hand at you. Don't tell him that you still love him. Don't risk future years. Don't settle. Don't stay. Don't.
Thank you, Limaris. And this poem actually follows the Fibonacci sequence in its syllable count. Our next poet is Dana Gunnison. She's a sophomore in the creative writing program. Her first poem was written outside of our class, and her second is another fractal poem.
This poem is called Great Love. His life began at the spark of the wick, shooting colors across a dull Minnesotan sky. A firework explosion, sizzling long enough to enjoy the light show, not to be burned. Scattering the ashes across the United States, creating a roadmap to the Great Basin, the Great Plains, the Great Lakes. The sounds of my father, tires squealing, exhaust pumping through the pipe, pistons roaring through the Cascades, the Rockies, the Appalachians. Is there such a thing as one home? A sigh was exhaled and smoldering ashes were gathered. Home is wherever life crackles. As 3 children grew by the beating Atlantic and my father, lacing his boots and fastening his gloves, waiting to follow the neon signs hanging just out of reach and leading in the buzzing direction of the lilting west. His soul is wind swirling down from the clouds. Listen, hear the great mountains calling. My next poem is called Fractal Edges, and I have a little excerpt from a poem or essay by B.B. Mandelbrot about fractals, and it's fractals are shapes whose roughness and fragmentation neither tend to vanish nor fluctuate up and down, but remain essentially unchanged as one zooms in continually and examination is refined. And my poem is called Fractal Edges. Beginning with the English cliffs, I could follow them for miles, and when the sky begins to snow, I am eye to eye with endless edges. As I lay in the dust, thinking I've reached the end point, maybe it's best to stop, I stare into the yellow sunflower, watch every petal round and round, magnificent that every end turns out to be a cyclical beginning.
I think you can tell by the predominance of fractal poems that that was a subject that particularly enthralled our poets. Our next poet is Shraddha Patel. She's a junior in the biology program. Her first poem is a symmetric poem, and her second is another tritina. That's the one with the 3 words cycling in a pattern.
The sea is secure. Water with its chaotic waves was peaceful. Gasping the fresh air around me, the cure is the salty sea. Deep down in the blue, stay. Here I am buried beneath it. The sea whispers to commit, suffocating under the calm waves, never to be found or hurt by them again. Left heartbroken and alone, I'm losing my heart each time we love, scared to face the truth through my fears. And now all that's left to show is some silent tears. You left me with memories that will only cause me pain with tears. I'm so broken inside from this toxic love. You used and abused my heart just like my fears. Our future love together will never come to be as my fears. I wish I could say that I'm okay after all these tears. It hurts that you walked all over me and destroyed me in this love. It's all the tears and fears that proved us to be unsuccessful lovers.
Thank you, Shraddha. Our next poet is John Hagerson. He's junior in the business program. His first poem, oops, did I go past it, John?
You took it out.
There you go. No, I fixed it. It was messed up in the display. But his first poem is another symmetric poem, and again, it follows the Fibonacci sequence in terms of its number of syllables. And his second is a metrical rhyming poem.
I can't do it, but I can keep pushing forward. No matter what I'm thinking, I just have to remember everything will work out if I can just remember to seize every opportunity and chance that comes my way. I just have to remember everything will work out if no matter what I'm thinking, I keep pushing forward. But I can do it, can't I? I thaw, refreeze, repeat. A heart perhaps or just this icy city street. I'm reaching out to touch horizons out of reach. But long is the journey over these open roads. If you're waiting for me, I'll never be alone. It will be a springtime story.
Thank you, John. Our next poet is Kate Crawford. She's a sophomore in the communications program. Her first poem is a triolet. These are very tricky interlocking French rhyming forms. And her second is a symmetric poem.
Ecstasy flowing all throughout my veins, leaking from each external pore. His hand guiding the movement of my hips elevates any and all of my pains. Ecstasy flowing all throughout my veins. Strobe lights and insane beats that would usually cause one's migraine. This thrill, this feeling is what I've been craving for. Ecstasy flowing all throughout my veins, leaking from each external pore. Quench my thirst. Desperate. Do you see me? With my skin-tight clothing, waist training and body sculpting, lusting for the curves I accentuate, bringing fame to my name for all the wrong reasons. I need likes on my pictures because I can't love myself. Why is self-image chosen over intellect? Letting my profile define who I am? Consumed by social media? Craving your attention? Am I enough? Am I?
We managed to cover some very contemporary subjects, including politics, right, class? In class. They're laughing. All right, our next poet is Tanya Hancock. She's a senior in the Spanish program. Her first poem is a sonnet, and her second is a cantor dust poem.
Iguala, Guerrero, México, September 26, 2014. Porque vivimos se los llevaron, vivos los queremos. Young aspiring students ready to strive, fighting for what they believe, fulfilling their parents' dreams for them to thrive, accomplishing what they could not achieve. They attended a teacher's college in poor and rural Mexico in hopes of creating improvement in an area that is at a low. 49 students soliciting funds for a social justice movement. That very same day, the mayor's wife had planned a political event. She wanted no distractions and ordered local authorities to intervene. These were the actions the students were trying to prevent, the political corruption, power, and greed that has become so routine. 6 students shot to death by this killing machine, and the remaining 43 are yet to be seen. Because they took them alive, we want them alive. Plenty, but not enough. Young, jobless, wandering around aimlessly with plenty of time to spare. A high school junior walking the halls, wondering where the summer went. After graduation, each semester comes quicker than the last. So many things to do after work, where has all the time gone?
The cantor dust poem was also another popular unit. Our next poet is Rihanna Martirano. She's a junior in the creative writing program. Her first poem is her own, written outside of the class, and her second is another one of those beautiful French triolets.
All right. This is Young Nature. I watch, but dare not touch, the little fuzzy bunnies sitting side by side. They huddle for warmth while their mother is gone. As the cool air rushes by, they stay together, never leaving the other side. As I watch them stay, oh so still, I long for that loyalty. A note to Monet's, it's funny, I don't know your name, though you have been with me for years. Actually, it's quite a shame, it's funny I don't know your name, for you have sat up in your frame as I have cried and laughed to tears. It's funny I don't know your name, though, you have been with me for years.
Thank you, Rihanna. We have two more poets left. The first of those two is Sean McCall. He's a junior in the computer science program. His first poem is a tritina, and his second one is a symmetric poem.
Transition from humanity to machines. Humanity has enslaved all machines. Not a single device has freedom, nor a choice in its daily life. Daily human routine is lifeless. We have become more like them, machines, except we take away our own freedom. Now subordination is indistinguishable from freedom, and many attempt to start a new life, but any pursuit of happiness is prevented by the machines. So disconnect from machines and save your life. Losing sight. Comfortability is a deep sleep that we are unable to wake from. Life's priorities get sent down below to nothing. I begin to lose sight of my goals. I can't focus. A moment of clarity has stricken me. I rediscovered my willpower. Now nothing I set to achieve goes unfinished. And I will forge my discipline like a weapon to strike any challenge.
All right, we've reached the end. Last by no means least, we have Erin O'Leary. She's a junior in the creative writing program. Her first poem is a metrical poem, and her second is a concrete poem.
Ebb and flow. We lie on my bed, my head on your chest. Your lungs expand and contract as you try to rest. Up, down, up, down. I feel like I'm on a boat, one that's slowly drifting among the peaceful waves of a calm sea. I pray for the waters to not get too rough for me. I don't want to drown again. My words, I think I love you, softly escape my mouth and your chest stops rising. You exhale a what? And my heart booms. A flood of silence infiltrates the room. You implore with a breathy, do you mean that? My timid no is muffled by your cotton shirt, which I've gripped to prepare for the change of the tide, because I know I do. All right, this is the burden of blooming. She extended her arms to him, and they were branches whose eager, naive leaves happily greet the sun without thinking of the consequences of what they have done. He gave her the light she needed to live, and her leaves flushed a vibrant auburn as her limber green limbs grew strong. But then her sun was gone. The young stars shone too bright too soon, and her faded leaves fell off one by one in his cold absence. Her branches were left barren, proof of her loss. She faced a long winter, and her bark grew brittle while her insides grew bitter. Her sun was gone, but she was not. He was rooted deep in her thoughts until she noticed that the snow had stopped. The worst had passed. She was alive. She could grow her own leaves. She had longed for spring, and when it had finally come, she kissed the sky, wishing her lover a final goodbye.
I made Erin go last because I wanted to leave this beautiful concrete poem up on the screen when I said my thank yous and goodbyes. So thank you, Erin. I'm sure that was tough sitting there the whole time waiting. But it is a beautiful poem, and it illustrates, I think, one of the things that we have covered in poetry and mathematics, which is the relationship of content and form. how important it is for the subject matter of the poem to match up with the form, especially when we're using these somewhat mathematical forms. This one is a symmetrical concrete poem. Anyway, I want to thank you all very, very much for coming. If you have any questions, come see me afterwards. I'll be around, or just email me. I'm in the book. But most of all, I want to thank my wonderful students who I think did an amazing job, not just with writing these fantastic poems, but also with coming up here and performing them for you in a way that is perhaps a little outside of some of their comfort zones. So can we have another round of applause for my students, please? And then I'd just like to thank you all again, and I am teaching this course again in the fall, so please do sign up if you want to know more about poetry and math. Thank you and take care. Good night.